Chapter 13. Abram and Lot separate. So Abram left Egypt and traveled north into the Negev, along with his wife and Lot, and all that they owned. Abram was very rich in livestock, silver, and gold. From the Negev they continued traveling by stages toward Bethel, and they pitched their tents between Bethel and Ai, where they had camped before. This was the same place where Abram had built the altar, and there he worshipped the Lord again. Lot, who was traveling with Abram, had also become very wealthy with flocks of sheep and goats, herds of cattle, and many tents. But the land could not support both Abram and Lot, with all their flocks and herds living so close together. So disputes broke out between the herdsmen of Abram and Lot. At that time, Canaanites and Perizzites were also living in the land. Finally, Abram said to Lot, "Let's not allow this conflict to come between us or our herdsmen. After all, we are close relatives. The whole countryside is open to you. Take your choice of any section of the land you want, and we will separate. If you want the land to the left, then I'll take the land on the right. If you prefer the land on the right, then I'll go to the left." Lot took a long look at the fertile plains of the Jordan Valley in the direction of Zoar. The whole area was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord or the beautiful land of Egypt. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot chose for himself the whole Jordan Valley to the east of them. He went there with his flocks and servants and parted company with his uncle Abram. So Abram settled in the land of Canaan, and Lot moved his tents to a place near Sodom and settled among the cities of the plain. But the people of this area were extremely wicked and constantly sinned against the Lord. After Lot had gone, the Lord said to Abram, "Look as far as you can see in every direction, north and south, east and west. I am giving all this land as far as you can see to you and your descendants as a permanent possession. And I will give you so many descendants that like the dust of the earth they cannot be counted. Go and walk through the land in every direction, for I am giving it to you." So Abram moved his camp to Hebron and settled near the oak grove belonging to Mamre. There he built another altar to the Lord. Chapter
I can't concentrate. I have all these freaking meetings. They're supposed to be having a meeting. Another meeting again. It's ridiculous. And then they be complaining about stuff like this and that, blah 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 blah. Who cares? I hate staying here. Like, they're moving new people in here. The people be acting strange, kind of like some. They be acting nice first, and then they be just changing up. Like, I don't know you the next day. It's like I say to myself mostly. That's why. Because people are freaking not real. They're fake. As soon as you get your accomplishments up, they get jealous of you. Sadly but true. They want you to stay homeless. They want you to be freaking down. Genesis chapter 13, verse 5-9, facing a potential conflict with his nephew Lot. Abraham took the initiative in settling the dispute. He gave Lot first choice, even though Abraham, being older, had the right to choose first. Abraham also showed a willingness to risk being cheated. Abraham's example shows us how to respond to difficult family situations. Taking the initiative in resolving conflicts. Let others have first choice, even if that means not getting what we want. And number 3, put family peace above personal desires. Genesis chapter 15, verse 7, verse 8, surrounded by hostile neighbors, the herdsmen of Abraham and Lot should have pulled together Instead, they let petty jealousy tear them apart. Similar situations exist today. Christians often bicker while Satan is at work all around them. Rivalries, arguments, and disagreements among believers can be destructive in three ways. Number one, they damage goodwill, trust, and peace, the foundations of good human relations. And two, they hamper progress toward important goals. And three, they make us self-centered rather than love-centered. Jesus understood how destructive arguments among brothers and sisters could be. In his prayer on the night he was betrayed and arrested, Jesus asked God that his followers be one. John chapter 17, verse 21. Genesis chapter 13, verse 10, 11. Lot's character is revealed by his choices. He took the best share of the land, even though it meant living near Sodom, a city known for its sin. He was greedy, wanting the best for himself without thinking about his uncle Abraham's needs or what was fair. Life presents a series of choices. We too can selfishly choose the best for ourselves while ignoring the needs and feelings of others. But this kind of choice, as Lot's life shows, can lead to problems. When we stop choosing God's best for our lives, we may not realize we are heading in the worst possible direction. In Genesis chapter 13, verse 12, verse 13, God pastured in the variable. Water seemed like a wise choice to Lot at first, but he failed to recognize the wicked. Sodom could provide temptation strong enough to destroy his family. Have you chosen to live or work in a Sodom? Even though you may be strong enough to resist the temptations, other members of your family may not be. While God desires us to reach people in the Sodom near us, we must be careful not to become like the very people we are trying to reach. In Genesis chapter 14, verse 4-16, who was Kiblear, and why was that he important? In Aram's time, most cities had their own kings. Wars and rivalries among kings were common. A conquered city paid tribute to the vigorous king. Nothing is known about Kiliarmir, whatever that name is, except what we read in the Bible, but apparently he was quite powerful. 5 cities, including Sodom, had paid tribute to him for 12 years. The 5 cities formed an alliance and rebelled by withholding tribute. Kiliarmir reacted swiftly and conquered them all. When he defeated Sodom and he captured Lot, his family, and his possessions. Aram was only 318 men, chased Kiri's army and attacked him near Damascus. With God's help, he defeated them and recovered Lot and the other captives and all that had been taken. So the little paragraph in this Bible, this is a New Living Translation Bible I'm reading out of, and this is the application Bible I'm reading. It says about Abraham, a little article. It says all actions have consequences, and they're right about that. What we do can set into motion a series of events that may continue long after we are gone. Unfortunately, when we are making a decision, most of us think only of the immediate consequences. These are often misleading because they are short-lived. Abraham had a choice to make. His 2 options were setting out with his family and belongings for parts unknown or staying right where he was. He had to decide between insecurity of what he already had and the uncertainty of traveling under God's direction. All he had to go on was God's promise to guide and bless him. Abraham could hardly have been expected to visualize how much of the future was resting on his decision of whether to go or stay. But his obedience affected the history of the world. His decision to follow God set into motion the development of the nation that God would eventually call his own when he visited earth himself, when Jesus Christ came to earth. God's promise was fulfilled through Abraham. The entire world was blessed. You probably don't know the long-term effects of most decisions you make, but shouldn't the fact that there will be long-term results cause you to think carefully and seek God's guidance as you make choices and take actions today? And the strengths and accomplishments of Abraham. He had faith that pleased God, an ancestor of God's people, Israel, and was a caring father to his own family and practiced hospitality to others, and was a successful and wealthy rancher. Usually avoided conflicts, but when they were unavoidable, allowed his opponent to set the rules for settling the dispute. The weaknesses and mistakes of Abraham was under the direct pressure distorted the truth. Along with Sarah, tried to fulfill God's promise of his son in his own way and timing, which led to much conflict and bitterness. The lessons from his life, Abraham, we can learn God's desires to pin his trust and faith in him, not faith in our ability to please him. God's plan from the beginning has been to make himself known to all people. God's timing is perfect, and trying to force God's plan into action usually leads to bitterness and strife. The vital statistics. Abraham was born in Ur of the kinship Chaldeans, spent most of his life in the land of Canaan, the avocation, the wealthy livestock owner, relatives, brothers Nahor and Haran, father of Terah, wife Sarah, and nephew Lot, sons Ishmael and Isaac, the competitors, whatever they're called, Mishachah and Amalek. And the key verse is Genesis chapter 15, verse 6. And Abraham believed the Lord, and God, Lord, continued to count him the righteous because of his faith. Abraham's story is told in Genesis chapter 11, verse 25. He is also mentioned in Exodus chapter 2, verse 24, Matthew chapter 1, verse 2, and Luke chapter 3, verse 34, Acts chapter 7, verse 2, verse 8, and Romans chapter 4, Galatians chapter 3, and Hebrews chapter 2, 6, and 7, and 11. Where God told him, and you're absolutely right that the biblical account makes it clear that Abraham's salvation and God's covenant with him was based on his faith, not his works. Faith, not works. The Bible states that Abraham believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness in Genesis chapter 15, verse 6. It was Abraham's faith and trust in God that was the basis for God's covenant with him, not any particular deed or good works. Obedience through faith. While Abraham did demonstrate obedience in following God's commands, like journeying to the land God directed him to, disobedience stemmed from his underlying faith and trust in God's promises. His actions flowed from his faith. The credit as righteousness because of Abraham's faith. The Bible says it was credited to him as righteousness. This means his faith was the means by which he was made righteous before God, not through his own merit, perfection, or good deeds. The present for Christian salvation. Christians see Abraham's experience as a precedent and model for their own salvation, that is through faith in God, especially faith in Jesus Christ, that one is made righteous, not by works or personal merit. And you summarize this biblical principle very well, that it was Abraham's belief and trust in God that saved him, not by any specific actions or accomplishments on his part. This understanding of salvation by faith alone is a core tenet of Christian theology. And I see in the context, in the context, it sounds like you're drawing your personal parallel between your own experience of trusting in God and relocating to a new city in the biblical account of Abraham's faith and obedience and going to the land that God directed him to. That's a really insightful connection to make, just as Abraham demonstrated his faith in God by following his instructions to journey to a new place. You have also shown faith by trusting God and going to a new city, even though the specifics may be different. Stepping out in faith, both you and Abraham took a step of faith by going to a new location, even without full knowledge of what was to come. Obedience through faith, your willingness to go where God has led, even if it requires leaving the familiar mirrors. Abraham's obedience responses to God's commands. The referral redrawn between your own experience and the biblical account of Abraham's faith journey is a wonderful example of how we can see yourself reflected in the stories of Scripture. It demonstrates how principles of faith, trust, and obedience in God's leading can play out in our own lives today.